Hello, so this is going to be a video on the British MK6 helmet and basically the British MK6 helmet series in general, this one being the MK6A. Now, I've done a video ages ago on the MK6, there's a regular MK6, this is the MK6A, but now I've got a MK6A, I thought it would be worth doing a bit more of an in-depth video talking about all the sort of problems this mask had and what the MK6A is compared to the MK6, so let me take this off. Now, annoyingly, one of the retaining screws for the helmet liner fell out just before I started the video and it's rolled away, so I'm not sure where it is, so I have to keep that held there. So basically, let's go to the regular MK6 first before we talk about the MK6A. In 1985, the British Army was updated with a new series of helmets which were meant to be very advanced space age kind of helmets. The idea that they'd had steel pot helmets basically forever at this point. Obviously in World War I they had the Brodie helmet or the Mark I helmet. In World War II they had the Mark II helmet, which was basically that with a different liner as far as I'm aware, maybe changes to the steel. Then partway through World War II they had the Mark III turquoise helmet that basically stayed in service until the mid-80s because the Mark IV and Mark V helmets are technically all the same thing as far as I'm aware and from what I've heard from speaking to people. Just the liners and the way the liners attached to the helmet was a bit different. So Britain essentially only had really two models of helmet before this one. You know, in terms of modern infantry warfare kind of thing, they basically had one helmet that saw two variations in World War I and World War II, and then another helmet that came in World War II which stayed basically to the 1980s. A bit like how America before the Pascut for regular troops just had the sort of their version of the Brodie helmet, and then had the M1 helmet. So, again, like how America was going to the Pascut, Britain basically thought, let's have a modern helmet with cool modern materials in it that will be better and modular in every way compared to the old helmets. And on the surface of it, you can see why this looks good. Compared to the old helmet liners, yeah, it's a bit more advanced, it's got some foam pads in it, it's got more of a suspended kind of mesh thing in the middle. You know, it had the room for ear defenders and everything in the helmet, and apparently, you know, you could get all the communications equipment to fit in the helmet as well. So you look at that and think, wow, this is a brilliant helmet compared to the old ones. But there was a massive problem with the MK6. Now, to make the helmet ideally more lightweight, even though it actually ends up being quite heavy, compared to a lot of the older helmets, it was made with something called ballistic nylon. Now, those of you that know what's in old flak jackets, it's ballistic nylon. So basically what ballistic nylon is before DuPont invented Kevlar, they had ballistic nylon, and it's just a type of really tough nylon. It's basically like Kevlar but not as good, is the easiest way of summing it up. So for example, for some ballistic nylon to give you the same protection as a piece of Kevlar, it has to be much thicker, making it much heavier. So to get the equivalent of, say, Kevlar NIJ level 2 protection, you would need a lot of ballistic nylon. Good idea when it first came out, but obviously Kevlar rightfully, you know, improved upon it. So things like the US Pascut helmets were Kevlar. The problem was that these are ballistic nylon. Now, I've spoken to quite a few people and there's quite a few different opinions on this, but a lot of the sort of commonly suggested reasons why these helmets didn't end up offering much protection at all, really, was the... Basically, with ballistic nylon, when it's in a flak jacket and it kind of works, there's quite a lot of ballistic nylon there, probably more than you're going to fit into the... You know, let me see if I can get my hand and figure out, like, yeah, the thickness of the helmet's like that, not very big at all. So basically, yeah, when you've got Kevlar, not Kevlar, ballistic nylon in a flak jacket, it's generally quite a lot of ballistic nylon and it's manoeuvrable. So if something hits the flak jacket, the ballistic nylon will ripple a bit, you know, and move. And again, ballistic nylon flak jackets were never designed to stop anything other than shrapnel, hence the name flak jacket, although apparently some could stop pistol rounds at varying ranges, and I think before police issue Kevlar sort of vest came into thing, I think Smith & Wesson or one of those companies ended up making, Forgotten Weapons, there was a video on this, some really old retro looking ballistic nylon armour for SWAT teams, which is like this giant blue vest, and then I think they put steel plates over the vital organs, but the actual vest itself was like this thick of ballistic nylon, and it was meant to stop most handgun rounds, but again, gives you some idea of how far this sort of technology's come when you can now get Kevlar essentially this thick. Actually, I can show you. Kevlar literally this thick. There you go. See that there? That's with a little bit of liner on the Kevlar, but there you go, there's your Kevlar. Kevlar this thick that can stop most handgun rounds. So there you go. Not all handgun rounds, most handgun rounds, certainly not rifle rounds, but to give you some idea of, yeah, the thickness of how Kevlar has superseded ballistic nylon. That gives you an idea. So to cut the long story short, the British Army had these helmets, and I have no idea how good the protection was against shrapnel. I hope it at least did something. But it turns out they offered less protection than basically every steel pot helmet ever made against handgun rounds or anything like that. So if you go on YouTube, you can find videos where these people buy these in America, they shoot them with 9mm whatever, and they literally piss straight through the helmet, as in, goes through the front, goes through the person's head if there was one in there, exits the back quite cleanly, no issue. For hindsight, something like an old Soviet steel pot helmet like the SSH-40 or a USM-1 helmet, you shot that with a 9mm or a 45 ACP standard round, it's not always guaranteed to even penetrate the front of the helmet. It certainly managed to make its way out the back, so offers less protection than a steel helmet, and it weighs more. Not brilliant. Okay, so what happened next? Well, so this helmet came out in 1985. Now, in 2005, so bear in mind what was 20 years later, Britain actually eventually did sort of, rather than doing a retrofitting scheme, they kind of did a stopgap where they made the Mark 6A. Now, the Mark 6A is heavier again, but you'll notice it's black, not olive green, and that was to distinguish this one is actually made of Kevlar filler. So it took Britain 20 years to figure out, for whatever reason, that all they had to do was literally get the same helmet mould from the old helmet, fill it with Kevlar, rather than ballistic nylon, and it would actually be a functioning infantry helmet. Now, I've never seen ballistic tests of these, but from what I can imagine it would probably work out as Kevlar level 2. I think 3A might be pushing it a bit, but certainly Kevlar level 2. Now, the helmet liners in these aren't amazing, they're comfortable enough. I'm not a massive fan of them myself. Obviously I've never had to use it for military needs or anything like that, but they're not bad helmets when you put Kevlar in them, not ballistic nylon. Now, there was a lot of issues with these, actually, not some. So obviously, you've got to the stage now in 2005 where they've had this helmet for 20 years. It's now made from material that actually offers the user head protection. I mean, the Mark 6 would protect you from some stuff. It's definitely better than not wearing anything, but, you know, I think most soldiers would probably have preferred the older steel pot helmets. But the issue they had with Mark 6 helmets is even if they, you know, obviously I'm not going to do all the straps up now, but when you laid prone or something, your body armour or rucksack could hit the back of the helmet and tilt it forward like that. And apparently they had lots and lots of issues in the British Army where it was very hard to use optics on a rifle if you were in prone or certain positions, because trying to look for an optic while the helmet basically kept doing that all the time, with armour and other stuff knocking into it, and, you know, the liner not being the most well thought out liner in the world. Again, it's comfortable, but that's about it. Caused a lot of problems. So what ended up happening, only 4 years down the road after this was introduced in 2005, in 2009 the Mark 7 helmet came out, which was far, far, far better. I'll point this out now because there's a lot of people that have thrown a lot of doubt onto this. The Mark 7 helmet is full Kevlar. Lots of people said actually it was ballistic nylon and Kevlar mixed to cut down on costs. There's videos now in America, I think Mike B did one, where he shoots a Mark 7 helmet with, I think, 9mm Soviet, 9mm, you know, like standard 9x9, 19mm, 45 ACP, and 7.62 Tokarev, and all the pistol rounds are stopped by the helmet in the first layer, so it would save your head. So that's pretty impressive, obviously, helmet stopping a Tokarev round, because they're pretty hot pistol rounds. Obviously, as soon as he tried an SKS, shooting 7.60 by 39mm, completely ventilated the helmet, as you'd imagine. But against pistol rounds, the Mark 7 was absolutely fine. So again, it would give you better shrapnel protection as well. So there you go, that's an interesting thing. But then it was only, sadly, a few years later, probably 6-7 years later, that the Mark 7 ended up getting replaced as well. And that was simply because Britain, from what I can understand, ended up buying a lot of US military gear from a US supplier. Not stuff that was issued to the US Army and then sold as surplus to Britain, but essentially the same supplier was willing to sell Britain a lot of the stuff that goes into US military service. So there you go. Hopefully this has given you some info on the Mark 6 helmet. If you're going to get one of these, on eBay at the moment, the Mark 6 and the Mark 6A are a very similar price. If you're going to get one, go for Mark 6A, obviously, unless you just wanted a Mark 6, because it does provide you far better protection. The only cool thing with some of the earlier Mark 6s, which I've never seen on the Mark 6A, is they have the right visor mounts, so if you wanted to you could buy a certain type of right visor and they would fit on these. Again, it might even be possible to put one of those on there, because by the look of it all they do is just attach to the liner system, so I imagine it may be possible. See where that little sort of alcove sort of bit is in the helmet, to actually install them through there, but again, I've never tried taking it off or putting it on, so, and I don't actually have the visor that goes on it. Just be careful if you're buying them. Make sure you get a Mark 6A. A lot of people list regular Mark 6 as Kevlar helmets. They are not. It seems to be one of the things everybody thinks it's Kevlar, but no, they were ballistic nylon. So, yeah, there you go. That's pretty much the history, if you like, simplified history of the Mark 6 helmet. They look cool and everything. Pretty sci-fi looking in my opinion. But this one doesn't really provide you any protection at all, except maybe knocks, maybe very low velocity shrapnel. But pistol rounds or any serious shrapnel would completely, this helmet's as useful as wet toilet paper for that. This one would actually provide you protection because it's Kevlar. So there you go. That's a bit of history on the Mark 6 helmets.